Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Jeanine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age, and today I'm live with Sean Lyons, CEO of RGA. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Jeanine, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Where are you working from these days?
I'm working from my home in Brooklyn, and I actually had to move my son out of his room so I had not to use as an office. Now he's living with his brother. So,
Nice. Nice.
I,
You must be enjoying that, bunking together.
yeah, they're definitely spending a lot of time together. I'll tell you that much.
How is that? How's the working from home going? Are you being interrupted by the kids like I am constantly?
Yeah, they've gotten into the rhythm, I'd say. I think it's been 2 weeks. The three of them, I have three kids. They all go to school right through school age. They've gotten into the rhythm. I think as the day goes on, they get really restless. So by 3 o'clock, I got to make sure I take a little break and get them outside or something. But
Yeah, this is the time. This is the time where I wish my 5-year-old was still taking naps. Like that time is the hardest part of the day.
yeah, it's a big adjustment. You got to work with your spouse to make sure you guys are giving each other time to do what they have to do. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm here with Sean Lyons, CEO of RGA. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them on any of our social channels or comment and chat along with us. We're talking about how hard it is working from home, of course, for your employees and sort of keeping everyone together and on task. What's that been like?
yeah, I think there's a few different layers to that. Like there's the is the company ready to work in this way, and there's like a technological readiness, right? And I think we have that. So we're lucky. We've invested quite a bit in building out this infrastructure over many years in terms of video conferencing, and Slack is our collaboration tool we use. We have Google that we use for all of our document storage. So that we have, right? We're used to that. The other piece, though, I think is, are people used to working in this way? Do they collaborate together already like this? And we do. So most of the work that happens in the US happens between more than one office, so 30% of it actually. So teams are already doing this. I think the other factor, though, is are people emotionally ready for this change? And how do you make sure you're adapting and giving them the opportunity to be at home, to do what they have to do at home, but also be at work? So it involves a lot of just empathy, basically. Making sure you can understand everyone has a different circumstance. And I've seen the company really, do incredible things around that and making sure they're accommodating everybody's individual needs. But we've adapted very well to that part, for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, today the big industry news of the day, of course, is Cannes being canceled for 2020. What do you think of this decision?
I'm not surprised, actually. I think that is absolutely the right call to make. I mean, I understand they made the call to move it to October, probably a few weeks ago. It made sense at that point. But I don't think anybody's really thinking about, not even just getting together, gathering, but celebrating at this moment. I think it's the right call to make. So I'm happy with that.
And I'm assuming we also won't really even know company to company, agency to agency, like what budgets will be like for travel at that point. Like, will you be able to commit those dollars to even go out there?
Yeah, we already pulled back entirely on that just to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. And I think most agencies probably did the same thing. It's a lot of uncertainty, right? So people like the getting together, they like that moment every year, but it doesn't make sense for this year. So I think they made the right call for sure.
Do you know how refunds are working, or because it was already postponed, were dollars not committed yet?
I think what they're doing is rolling over your passes to next year, to 2021, which again makes sense. And I think that they'll have to figure out how to handle all the awards entries and all that. And I think that's one of the bigger impacts is like everyone. You like to get judged by your peers. It's very hard. And you want your clients to see the work that you did together get awarded. And at this moment, it doesn't feel like the right thing to do. Maybe that changes in October.
Right.
To tell you the truth.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if, we'll have 2 years worth of entries come, 2021, or how the entry system and awards will operate at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you could do a lot of the judging remotely, to be honest with you. And obviously the early stages of the judging are done that way. But I think that maybe that will allow them to kind of, get through a larger amount of entries.
Right. So, you mentioned at the beginning of this that you, as the agency, has already been working in a lot of ways, sort of remotely or with teams that, are not in one place. How do you think RGA is equipped to adapt to the current environment?
Well, from a day-to-day work perspective, very well. We ran a full agency test, a couple of days before we shut down completely to make sure that everything was working well. So that was worked out very well. I think the other part we have to remember at this moment is communication. So we have to make sure we're communicating with our company, everybody, a lot more frequently than we normally do. And that's because you have to make sure people understand where we are, the decisions we're making, how we're going to adapt. And so the communication aspect is ramped up a lot. So myself working with our CMO, Jess Greenwood, has been a lot of effort to make sure we're telling everybody the things that we're doing as we do them. And that's been another key change. I think any agency would tell you that they're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Has the pitching process continued?
It has, funny enough. I mean, I think there's a bunch of active pitches that were in process, through the course of March. A very small amount have been delayed or canceled. I'd say maybe less than 10%, to be honest with you. Will that change in Q2? Yes, I think it will. I think as clients look at budgets and they look at priorities, they will change the amount of pitches that they're running. But one part of the business that hasn't really been affected as much has been more of the kind of direct-to-consumer, the product and service work that we do. Websites, mobile apps, those kind of things, because those things are what clients need now to connect directly with their consumers. So those have been the ones that we've seen more of lately.
So how does the pitch process work in this virtual world? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah, it's funny. I think in some ways it's better, because it actually, when you have a pitch, especially something that everybody wants to work on, you end up attracting a lot of people in the company who want to work on it, which is great. But good pitches are usually run by a small amount of people. So doing it in this way remotely, actually, your core team gets a lot smaller in the beginning. So there's a lot more ownership from the beginning. There's a lot more kind of momentum, really. As far as presenting, yeah, it can be awkward to present over Zoom or over some other technology, but it's been going very well. I think it's pretty seamless, to tell you the truth. So we haven't had a problem at all. Yeah.
So much of pitching feels like chemistry too. Like, how do you kind of get that chemistry over Zoom or any sort of virtual program?
It's harder. I think when you think about final presentations, they're often scripted and organized, and you know exactly what you're doing. But as far as the earlier stage strategy and tissue sessions, those are more conversation based. And I think you just have to, learn the etiquette of how to do this over video conference. You can't, when everybody's on video conference, everybody's on an equal footing. And I think that is what allows it to work pretty well. When you have a group of people in a room and then you have other people who are on video, usually the people on video are the ones who lose out. But it's gone pretty well. And I think the clients have been attentive and focused during this time. So we haven't seen an impact in terms of the quality of the presentations. But you're right, meeting face to face it's chemistry. It's hard to replace that. But this is the world we're in now, so we have to make do.
Right. I'm Jeanine Poggi here with Sean Lyons, CEO of RGA. I want to give a shout out to some folks who are watching. We have Bart from Warsaw, Poland, Richard from Fleet, UK, Jacqueline from Georgia, Philip from Miami, Michelle from New Jersey, and Yoon from Seoul. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in our social channels. So we're talking about the pitch process, and obviously that's changed significantly. But how about production? With all of the productions being shut down, the inability to do things in person, how are you handling that? And what are some of the things that you have been doing?
Yeah, good question. I think, yes, they all have been shut down, right? So live action production is really gone, as it should be, right? We've actually moved a lot of that work towards, post-production, animation work, other things like that. We've also, since our office in China is back up now, Shanghai is up and running. They were really going through this way before we were, as we know. They're back up and running, and we're looking at actually shifting some productions there. But largely the big productions have been moved, and that's as to be expected. But that hasn't impacted our business as much.
Are there any ways to do like remote productions, like you mentioned the animation stuff? But are there other things or other innovative ways to kind of do some stuff remotely now?
I think there's the obvious thing that we're doing now, which is live streaming, right? So live streaming is definitely something that is the only way you can pull off events, right? So I think there's an aspect of that. I also think there's a reliance on influencers quite a bit. When you think about brands wanting to get work out there, relying on individual influencers is another way to get productions made without having large groups of people kind of gather together. And those are really the two things that I've seen. Yeah.
You talked about the live stream. RGA is working with Verizon for Pay It Forward Live. Can you talk a little bit about that, sort of how it all came together? And, a lot of these things I think right now are coming together so quickly. How are you doing these things at such a rapid pace?
Yeah, this is really great. This is Verizon taking a real leadership position, trying to help small businesses across the country. And when you think about what they provide now, Verizon's network is really the backbone of everything that we're doing right now. We're communicating over it. We're using it to stay in touch with family and friends. So they are essential now, right, front and center. So the team, led by Tiff Rolfe, our CCO, worked with Diego Scotti, the CMO, and the larger kind of Verizon integrated team to kind of develop an idea that allowed us to kind of make sure we can get the talent that they've sponsored out there for a good cause. So every Tuesday and Thursday, there's a live stream. Last night was Ryan Tedder of One Republic doing a concert and urging people to kind of support their local businesses. And that's through some collaborations we have with both Square and PayPal to enable you to buy gift cards directly and donate directly. And Verizon's putting $2.5 million behind the effort to support local businesses. So it's amazing because it's really something that should be happening now. And that was pulled off within 48 hours, actually, from idea to execution.
Yeah, we're seeing, it seems like a lot of the messaging from brands, or the ways that brands are participating, is by doing these things to sort of give back. What is the right, tone for brands to take, or sort of what is a brand's purpose during the pandemic? What have you been advising clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? You have to really make sure that your role is one of helping, right? And what can you do as a company to help as opposed to sell? We all know that, right? It's why you see that it doesn't make sense to be doing that. And I think the better a company understands itself and knows its purpose, the faster they're going to be able to react. And I think you're going to find that across the board. Companies that really just need their key partners to give them that advice, give them that courage in some cases to do these things. And I think that's the advice I would give. And I think some have pivoted faster than others. There's a lot of amazing companies like Amex who also support new small businesses and are perfectly suited to help in this area. So I expect to see more of it.
We have a comment from Joseph on LinkedIn. In this global crisis, we can only hope companies maintain this level of empathetic flexibility. If anything, it's demonstrated individuals and teams can perform with trusted autonomy. Sort of, talking about the pitch process too, and people kind of understanding this is the new reality, I think. So I do think that there is a level of just understanding and acceptance right now that this is how the industry has to operate.
Yeah, and I hope the empathy point. I hope that's something that just continued. I think crises do bring people together, and I think that's something that we have to maintain afterwards. As far as what will happen, I think one thing that will be great from this is that companies trust their employees. They should trust their employees. We work remotely across our 17 offices all the time. You can access talent now in any city in the world through this technology. It's obvious. We've known that, right? I think we've used it to our advantage. But even more so, I hope to see that there'll be an opportunity for talent who maybe aren't in the biggest cities in the world, most expensive cities in the world, to work on these things with us. So I find it really opens the talent market up. And I think that will be exciting for us to kind of hopefully continue once we get through this difficult time.
It'll be interesting to see what practices carry over after this, if, companies will be more understanding about work-life flexibility and being able to do some of the things that we are doing now from home, if that will continue, because it's been proven that, look, businesses are still going with employees spread all over the place. So we'll see how that sort of continues after the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. I think that's, again, something I hope continues, something that we've been able to practice. We're not a giant company. Maybe if you're bigger, it might be harder. Also, some jobs you have to remember, have to be in a physical place. If you're working in a factory or a warehouse, like it's a difficult thing. But I hope to see that.
A question from Lysandra on LinkedIn. How are you seeing allocations for event sponsorships, even activations for after June 2020?
So most events that we were involved in, we don't have a big event business. We work on things around events. They've all been moved or pushed for sure. I think the event business has been hit very hard by that. So that's really been moved. That's all I can say there. I think some things have been trying to adapt to move online, like I just described to you on those Verizon events, but I'm not sure everything can do that.
This is an interesting question from Brooke. How is RGA dealing with bringing on new talent during this hectic time? I'm curious, actually, hiring practices. Can you can you hire in this climate, and what is it like, bringing in new talent if you are at this point?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's funny. I had a Tuesday at noon. I had an onboarding with the new employees. So I met them at noon. There's really like a 3-hour session we take people through, but this was done all through Zoom. So I'd said to them like this is a you're going to remember this moment because you're joining a company at a very kind of pivotal time, and we're doing this in this remote fashion. But it was actually interesting because it was a little more intimate. It was in my home. Was able to talk to them directly, share some things I was thinking about, and thanking them for joining the company. And then also just urging them to connect to the people that they're working with one-on-one, just to build those relationships from the beginning. So I think what you have to do is you actually have to, forget the hiring for a second. Like when you bring them into this environment, you have to make sure you're really organized about that onboarding plan and make sure the new hires feel like they know what they're going to be doing the first 1, 2, 3 weeks, and have those consistent check-ins so that they feel like they're connected and settled. As far as hiring, yeah, I mean, you can do interviews over this technology very easily. You can share work, you can present. So it doesn't really impact us that much in terms of the process.
I'm here with Sean Lyons, CEO of RGA, talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the industry, on the agency, and how business is going to be moving forward. At this point in time, it feels like everything is very much being operated in real time. It seems really hard to plan much further out than even a couple of weeks because things are changing so rapidly. What are clients asking you for at this point?
A range of things. It is very short term. So we're actually thinking about what we can do. What can we do today, this week? Maybe the longest term is what are we doing in the second quarter? Right? What are those things we have to continue? And there's a range of things clients are asking for. I think they're asking for advice on how they can show up properly in this environment. Going back to the purpose. What's our purpose in this moment? What can we do to help? Right. So that becomes one natural place. The other place is how do I actually create things that create a connection between me and my direct consumer. So the direct to consumer side of the business in terms of building web applications, mobile applications, connection points between the consumer and the brand are the things that are continuing because they're only that much more important right now. You need that. You can't rely on media to reach your consumers. You have to be able to reach them directly. So those kind of things are the projects that are continuing and usually at a faster pace with more urgency.
What are some of the things that you're advising clients like to absolutely not do, things that they should either stay away from or avoid completely?
Well, overt selling, right? Overt selling, trying to profit from a crisis like this, and none of our clients are trying to do that. But those are the obvious things that you try to avoid. I think the other thing is, don't do nothing. You have to do something, right? And I think people expect companies to step up a bit for sure. With Verizon and the Pay It Forward program, there's a lot of positive sentiment around what they're doing because they're enabling these performers to connect with their fans, all the while we're trying to promote and help local businesses because we know that's going to be one of the most hardest hit parts of the economy. So I think I would make sure that you do act, think before you act, but act. Don't stand on the sidelines.
Yeah. How are you preparing for, or what do you expect the long-term implications of all of this on the ad industry?
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of smart people thinking through what might be permanent changes, what might not be. I think these are some things we've seen happening, and maybe they'll just accelerate. I think the reliance on super high end production values for everything in terms of big giant productions. I think that's we've all seen that you can pull off amazing events and do amazing content with a lot less. So I think maybe that will be an impact. When you think about the importance of the social platforms right now. So truly embracing them, not just looking at those media channels, but truly embracing them to build communities and build connections with consumers. I think that is actually another long-lasting thing that we're going to see. The other part I mentioned already, which is really kind of access to talent, like working with talent in this way that aren't necessarily in the kind of epicenters of the ad industry, like London and New York, but be able to go out into other markets and get great people to work on these things. I think that will be a long-lasting piece. Last piece I would say is, reliance on real estate. You need a lot less physical space to gather people when you can have a portion of your folks working remotely, like we do now.
We have a question from Mara on LinkedIn. What would you suggest to students who want to gain experience, with many of them doing so through internships that have been canceled?
That's really, really good question, and it's tough. We've had
For kids coming out of college and, just getting into the marketplace.
it's tough. I've spoken to a few clients actually whose children are graduating now, and what is that graduation going to be like? They're going to be walking into a very, very hard time. Really good question. We're thinking a lot about this because first it's safety, right? We can't be holding internship programs, and these programs are starting in early June. We can't hold them if we're not going to be connected in the office, so we have to be aware of that. But what we're looking at is actually, can we do some things through digital channels? Can we run digital boot camps? Can we run digital internship programs? Those are things that we're planning. We can't pull those off for the immediate, for the summer right now. But we're thinking about, can we do it late summer, maybe early fall? And I think that's essential. I also think that, the market, while it'll be difficult, I think there's an opportunity to reach out to companies that you want to work with. And I think they'll be receptive, once this thing passes, to get new talent in. It's always been the case. Our industry is fueled by young talent. So I think that will be something that will pick up very quickly after this crisis is abated.
We have another question from Larry Locke on Facebook. How can your platform and media partners best support RGA teams in this time?
Oh, Larry. Hello, Larry. How are you doing? Good to see you. Good question. I think, Facebook just released a great spot that they worked on with Droga. I think it hits the right tone. I think there's a partnership that they can do with our clients. I think we can think about how you guys can help us with this Verizon Pay It Forward program. When you get big companies and big platforms together, I think that's where you're going to get the scale. So I would say that. I think the other piece is helping us advise our clients on what the right next steps are. If they're feeling like they need to pull back on advertising, that's fine. Okay, what are the next things that they can do to help people? How they build groups and forums to enable people to connect together. So I think you guys have a big role to play in that, and I look forward to talking to you.
I'm with Sean Lyons, CEO of RGA. Keep the questions coming. It was reported, of course, that a few RGA employees tested positive for the virus. How are they doing? But also, how do you handle that situation in terms of communicating that to employees and sort of rallying staff when these things happen?
Yeah, no, good question. And it's really important that we treat this not like a stigma, right? Like, this is something that impacts everybody. So first of all, if you get sick, you get sick. This is going to happen to a lot of us, and I think we have to be empathetic about that. It's important to us that we communicate to the company that if someone's been infected, right? But it's their right to have that be held privately. So we made sure very quickly, we told people the status of those cases, where they were at, and cautioned them just to make sure that they felt safe. The people that were around those folks, of course, were quarantined for 14 days. We're past that mark now, so that we're safe there. But we've had some, it's difficult. You have to really, reach out to those individuals that and offer them support. This is a very devastating disease, and I think I know several people who have it, and it really is no joke. So you have to make sure you're protecting them first, and then yes, communicating to your company about that. And look, the risk is, some cases that's going to come out in the press. I'm not worried about that at all. We did the right thing. You have to tell everybody what's happening. The fact that it was published is, fine. I would share that externally if I had to, but it was really something that we did for our employees.
Gotcha. We're heading into the weekend, and I don't know if that's even a good thing or not, because there's no real differentiation at this point. How are you trying to separate work and personal, and how are you, encouraging your employees to do so?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm not sure how well I'm doing at it. I think I'm doing it, right? But I'm actually just being flexible. I've always been that way. And I think, last Saturday I had a lot of calls. Saturday was like another work day last week, right? But Sunday I made sure I took off completely so I could recharge. You have to make sure you're creating that space. I think the other part is how are you negotiating that with your spouse, right? With your partner? How are you making sure that you're giving each other space? So there's moments, where I have to take off. She's a part of, she has to go to. So you got to be flexible, right? And you got to enable your employees to do the same thing. And people have to be able to speak up. They have to be able to say, look, I can't do that because of X. That's fine. As far as the weekend, like, with the kids, I'm trying to make it feel as normal as possible. Like, do things with them, do projects. We're having an art show tomorrow. So we get things kind of scheduled so they have something to look forward to. So I'm trying to create some normalcy around that, because everything's been canceled. All the events, all the sports they go to, everything. So we have to build our own little environment, right? I'm sure you're doing the same thing.
Maybe our next remotely should be the kids' art shows.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
whole bunch of them showing off their arts and their ballet classes, their virtual ballet classes, and we got a virtual soccer class even. So
Yeah.
it's certainly an interesting time that we're all navigating both personally and professionally. And Sean, I thank you for joining us and walking us through how RGA has been handling this.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jeanine. Appreciate it. And
Thank
stay
you.
safe.
You too.